Hello, my fellow chatterers and book lovers, and anyone else who's popped in because you're a bit curious or you got lost. Welcome anyway. I am Chatty and welcome to my channel, Chatty the Mad Chatter, where I'm going to be chatting away madly about the rest of what I've been reading in October. And I will be kind of going over the books I read for both Gothtober and Blackoweenathon. I totally forgot to mention it in the previous one, so we'll just do it all in one go and it's fine. It's all going to be crazy because I have very few notes. I'm just going to talk about the books. We'll see what happens. I hope I can remember some of them. The only notes I have are these kind of tiny ones reminding me of all like the Gothtober and Blackoweenathon prompts and seeing if I did actually fulfill them. We'll find out. We'll go on the crazy journey together because on this channel we do my videos that are long in one shot. There is no editing. Anything can happen. So cheers everyone. Let's embrace the waffle and the chaos. It's already starting because I can't put the cup on a saucer. Okay. So last time I was talking to you, I had read these 5 books here. Shadow and Ember were leftovers from September that I was trying to catch up on. And then I read The Dancing Face, and then these 2 little tiny ones here because I got excited at the library, but I was realistic and I only got short books. Oxygen Mask and the fabulous collection of poetry, Somebody Give This Heart a Pen by Sophia Thurker. And I also mentioned I started these 3 here, so that is what we're going to start with. I started Fool's Errand, but then felt whatever I read after it was going to suffer because of the Hob hangover. So I paused at a very nice spot in Fool's Errand and I read Belladonna by Adeline Grace. This is the lovely Fairy Loot edition here with these absolutely beautiful sprayed edges. And let's just have an appreciation of the book in general. We have these gorgeous end pages here with death. Sorry, my mouth can't form words. With death and Signa. I'm calling her Signa. I don't know if other people will call her Signa. We'll go with Signa. You can correct me if I'm wrong. And under the dust jacket we have this lovely, all the berries and the flowers going on here. I really like the art of this book. It really adds all the wonderful atmosphere that it provides. I was excited to read this. I haven't really read anything kind of with those gothic vibes. I was excited about like the herbalness of it all. And I do love books that have a death personification. I think just generally enjoy death as a character. I haven't met a death I didn't like. What a fun, weird thing to say. Right, back to the book. Where was I going with this? See, already waffle is galore. Yes, I was very intrigued and excited to read this. I was not expecting to love it as much as I did, and I really did enjoy this book. And actually, the more I think about it, the more it kind of continues to grow on me. I had so much fun reading this. It ticks a lot of the boxes that I enjoy, where you've kind of got this like social etiquette setting, and then you've kind of got humor coming into it, and like people kind of acting out of what they should be acting in those kind of like social moments that you would all be thinking like, here's a dainty tea, but you're only supposed to take tiny nibbles, and you're like, I'm really hungry, I just want to shove a scone in my face, which is what Signa does, which I very much enjoyed. I enjoyed all the herbalness. I enjoyed kind of the mysterious house and the family and trying to find out what was going on. I didn't guess. I had theories that weren't happening, so I enjoyed all of that. But I also enjoyed the magical side of it, exploring that. There were moments when I was reading that I felt like I kind of wasn't on board with certain parts of characters or plot, because I was like, sure, let's go along with it for the journey, but I don't really feel it's believable. But then stuff happened later in the book and it's like, oh, she wanted you to feel like that, so that's fine. So yes, author did a great job at making you feel everything you're supposed to feel, and it worked so well. I just had a great time with this. Again, death is fabulous. We love death. The chemistry that Death and Signa have is wonderful. friendships that she's trying to build, like the way she's trying to go through the world. Signal was a really enjoyable main character to kind of hang out with and be with. That is always sometimes like what can harm a book if you're not kind of like really vibing with your main character, because it is written in first person? Pretty sure it's written in first person. It's written in first person. So all of that was really great. Yeah, I had a really enjoyable time. I highly recommend. I think a lot of people are enjoying this. I think the general consensus is people do really like this book, and I'm very excited for Foxglove, the second book, coming out in August. So yes, this was a definite win. I loved all the gothic vibes, but there was definitely like a lightness and a humour involved in it as well. There were definite moments as well where I felt the tension of the moment and things that were happening. I really, really enjoyed this. Okay, then we come on to Fool's Errand. Unsurprisingly, Robin Hobb. This is adult epic fantasy. It is the third series out of the Realm of the Elderlings, and it is the first book in the series. I read the novella, The Wilful Princess and the Piebald Prince, before reading this book. You don't have to, because like this book was written before that novella, but I think the general consensus is if you read it first, you get like a further layer of enjoyment in this one because of the like understanding the kind of like the folklore and where this prejudice comes from, and also like what is hearsay and legend and what was the actual events that occurred. So that was really, really fascinating. But we are back in this series with Fitz. So Fitz was a child in the Farseer trilogy. In the Assassin's Apprentice, he was a child / young man. I can't remember the exact age ranges. I mean, Derri will tell you if you need more facts on Farseer, if you need more facts around the Elderling, go to Derri from the channel. Derri's read it before. She is the guru, the empress of Hobb. Unsurprisingly, it's Hobb. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. So I really loved the Liveships as well. I really loved Farseer, and I enjoyed both of them for the different things that they give me. And coming back to Fitz, it felt like coming home. Like we pick him up where we left him. And if you've not read Farseer, I don't want to say too much because of spoilers, but there's recurring characters that you get to see again. So that time frame of where you left and this story picks up, it feels like you're meeting everyone again. It feels like that reunion feeling. I had such a good time with this. And you know what? Let's go into a little bit of spoilers. So, if you have not read Farseer, if you have not read Liveships, if you've not read Hobb, if you haven't read Robin Hobb, then I would like you to then skip ahead. I've got timestamp. Skip ahead to the next one. If you've no intention of reading Hobb, then, sure, stay around. But I think you should read Hobb because she's wonderful. But it's classic Hobb. You get characters you care about and you are with them, and it's a slow burn, but that slow burn absolutely pays off because you are so invested in what's happening. You feel for these characters, you feel upset for these characters, you feel anger for these characters, you feel terror for these characters. Like, not just like what's physically happening to them, but massively what's emotionally and mentally happening to them, and the scars they have from previous books. There's still a lot of work that needs to go through, especially with Fitz. There's just so many scars on Fitz. Water. That's better. There's so many scars on Fitz, and I think I've said it before, Fitz is my book baby. I adopted him when I met him, so now he's my grown-up son, and I'm still very maternal about him. I'm still very protective of him, and regardless of decisions he makes, I will always be, the parent love is real. And it just really pulls at your heartstrings so much. But we're now going into spoiler territory, so skedaddle, people, skedaddle ahead to when I have a different book. So like I said, we meet Fitz. So we have this wonderful moment where we left him at the end of Farseer. He's living in a cottage. He was given a foundling to take into his home by Starling the minstrel, who she found. He doesn't really see anyone. He's living his, best cottagecore life. Him and Night Eyes went wandering across the world. We get to hear about those journeys a little bit as he talks to other characters. But essentially we're picking up with him and Night Eyes, a little bit creaky joints going on for both of them. And we get to meet his son that he adopted, and seeing Fitz in a paternal role, obviously it brings back how he was raised as a child and different strengths and weaknesses he took from the people that tried their best to parent him, and they didn't always get it right, but they did their best. They did love him and they did their best with what they hoped. There weren't any natural, there weren't anyone that was like, like natural skilled parents that people that automatically are like child focused and kind of get children's mentality and how to kind of help them in the best way. Then you get other people who are like, I have no idea what to do with this child, but do the best they can. And that was exactly like Fitz's child rearing. Like, it was very much kind of mini adult raising rather than any kind of child focus for his part. And we get to see that all like coming through in his parenting. We also hear about his daughter that he never got to raise because of wanting to protect her and Molly, and then the really difficult part for him where he knows they're alive and well, and he knows he can't be part of their life because to become part of their life would be too messy for the peace and happiness that they have found should he return into it. Fitz knows he kind of brings a bit of this element of danger. He also knows that people who care about him found they were able to be happy without him. And if he throws himself back into the picture, they will feel hurt and upset. And it just, as much as he wants to go and see them, he knows he can't. And it's just that sacrifice, which I find phenomenal. And we also get to see his third child, which is more of his sperm donor child, that I'm not sure who else knows is biologically from him. We had a bit of discussion about it. So I've been buddy reading this with Anitha Garde in Gregory LePerch's Discord, and there's lots of other people involved in that chat, and she did a live show with Derri and Pete and Evie, and I don't think any of us, well, I think Derri can't say anything, but I don't think any of us could recall exactly who else knew about that moment in Assassin's Quest where Verity went to Catricum but wearing Fitz's body, and the result was dutiful. So the premise of this book is that we have Fitz in his life and then gets pulled back to kind of the old Farseer politics, and we do get to see, oh sorry, just need to go and deal with something. Dealt with that. So trying to remember where I was. So yeah, Fitz is, we see him getting pulled back into Farseer politics and crossing paths with Dutiful. So we get to see his way of being around Dutiful, and so all of those different children in his life really kind of hark back to his own childhood, and it's just so fascinating to see him in like parental role, and I'm really keen to kind of see how that develops in the next books in the series. I'm hoping we continue to see that aspect of Fitz, and kind of how it all joins together. One of the things I love so much in these books are the relationships, and just how the story is just so detailed and layered, and because we've had a whole trilogy before that there was so much depth to it, and because we've kind of gone on a journey kind of knowing more about the world with Liveships and getting to see a different aspect of the Fool, like we then have all of that knowledge as we're reading this, and it just makes it so much richer, like as we kind of see all those different like links of the story kind of coming together. So this was kind of like just a beautiful ease back into the world of Fitz, and I loved seeing him reconnect with characters in the past. We got to see Shade again, we got to see Starling, and we got to see the Fool. Starling, I had mixed feelings in Assassin's Crest, but I was always trying to see the good in her. Like I wanted her to feel, you know, she's part of this little group, she's part of this team. There were moments that I found annoying about her character and didn't enjoy, but there was also a lot of moments I'm like, well, she's part of their team, she's got their back. And then in this, I have cut all ties with Starling. She is no longer part of the team, she's no longer welcome. I just did not enjoy her behaviour, but it felt true to her character. There was always that side of her, and it's a shame that she chose to open up that side of herself rather than go down kind of a different way. I mean, I like that she's a minstrel. I enjoy that she feels like a very liberated minstrel and doesn't mind too much what other people think of her. But it turns out she does. And I did feel that she had, you know, she was a friend of Fitz, but it just is very apparent she's a friend of what Fitz represents and what she would like him to be, rather than the actual humble, adorable, sometimes making stupid decisions, but essentially so good-hearted Fitz that we love. She doesn't want that Fitz. She wants the Fitz of legend. She wants a Fitz chivalry. She doesn't want Fitz that we want to just be happy. And she was very vindictive and said horrible things, not just to Fitz but also to Hap, and like deliberately did it to, like, she wanted them to hurt because she knew she wasn't going to get her way. She wasn't going to be able to have her cake and eat it. You know, you can have multiple different relationships and sexual partners should you wish, but you need to be open about this, Starling, and you also need to respect that that's not going to work for everyone. So stop making Fitz feel bad about himself, stop being horrible to Hap. And she didn't, so we're done. However, the other reunions were much more delightful. Seeing Shade again and his relationship with Fitz, and that is such a fascinating relationship because again there was a certain paternalness to it. There was a certain kind of respect of a mentor and an elder. There's also a certain resentment in there from Fitz's side. And there's a genuine kind of like still mistrust in there from Fitz as well, given everything that happened, which although hurts Shade, like he can see where it comes from. And I think that was one of the things, we still see those scars of Fitz early childhood. Got to go deal with something. There's just always so much to talk about with this book. So yes, going back to Fitz's early childhood, and that he wasn't explicitly shown that he was loved and valued. It was very much like he was seen as a tool, he was seen as a burden, but under the layers of that we see that he was loved, but because it wasn't obvious and no one came out and said it, he still has that feeling that that people don't like him, that he's a problem, that he's not lovable. And despite, you know, you can see the joy in Shade and Shade and Catrican, and especially the Fool, when they see him again. And it's like, Fitz, you are loved, people like you. To the point, the one that struck me the most was that he's given this charm. We meet this wonderful character called Jinna, and she makes charms and herbs and things. So there is like a sense of magic to it. She's a head witch. And this charm is kind of to make people predisposed to like him and kind of agree with him. And it's not like powerful, but it gives him a slight edge that people will be drawn to him and will like him. And he has this moment where Dutiful starts talking to him towards the end, and he's like, oh, it's because of the charm. And then he sees it on the bed and realizes he's not wearing it. And I'm like, Fitz, people like you. And it's so truthful, and it's so just sad but kind of heartwarming as well, that he doesn't see himself the way other people see him, and that is so apparent with the Fool as well. Like, I loved how much Fitz and Fool together we got in this book. It was just so joyous, and in whatever capacity, you know, Fitz and Fool are soulmates. Like, Fitz and Fool to the end. I love them together. They are beautiful, and in the very wise words of Night Eyes, they are pack. Anyway, it was so beautiful to pick up all the relationships. I do want to talk a little bit more about our wonderful Amber Fool. So it's so fun to see, and this is just, I think, how Hobbs' writing is so fantastic and so clever. We see all these different aspects of the Fool. So in the Farseer trilogy, Fool is Fool. In Liveships, she is Amber, and in here, he is Lord Golden. So the Fool just has so many aspects, but it all feels truthful and to the Fool. So I think we get glimpses during Assassin's Quest of Fool without the Jester's face. So they're just showing themselves. And then we get aspects, we get those same glimmers within Amber in Liveships, and we get those same glimmers in between Fool being Lord Golden and then being by themselves with Fitz. So it's amazing how Fool has so many different faces, but it's essentially Fool each time. And I've no idea what gender Fool is. If Fool sees gender, I see Fool as very gender fluid, and until Fool tells us, I'm very much like, Fool doesn't need a gender. Fool is Fool, and we love Fool. They are wonderful. I refer to Fool as, you think they're settled and it's fine to film, and then they just need to show you things. So we may get interrupted a lot, we will see. So yeah, I love the Fool, and I love how Hobb writes them, and that it's just so clear. And I love that we got Fitz and Fool just sharing kind of their journeys of kind of where they've been since they last saw each other. We got little moments from the Fool, when there was that moment in Ship of Destiny when there was a character in Liveships that was not disposed kindly towards Fool. Or was it Madship? I can't remember which one it was. It was one of the two. They were on the deck of Paragon. And there's a character that wasn't a kind person and did not like the Fool. And those two were left on deck together. And I was like, no, this is a bad idea. And then he comes running in the cabin to say that the Fool is hurt. And we're like, why have you done that? What is going on? And then that kind of like, I never quite understood what happened in that moment. I was just like, the Fool was so lucky. And then it's revealed in here that Fitz was skilling and used his power to stop that character basically killing the Fool and to make him go and get help. And I was just like, that's wonderful. That fits everything. Hobb is a genius, and I just love it. So it's little things like that. And throughout this, you have the main plot of the story, which was brilliant, but then you have little snippets of kind of like the overarching. No one knows what the overarching plot is. We obviously have the Fool as the White Prophet and Fitz as the Catechist. We get a little bit more about that. There's little hints that maybe there's still more stuff with Red Ships. Obviously, there's still more dragon lore going on. We get a glimpse of the other speech. There's just so much in here that you're like, what does it all mean? And it's so exciting. So with the plot of this was, I really enjoyed looking more at the wit and the old blood and the prejudice within the land. I thought that was so powerful and so fascinating to explore. And just again, that type of prejudice and how communities will, breed hate. And it's one of those things where, again, just like Liveships, there are so many aspects in here that are reflective of our society and what we go through and see in our world. And I just love Hobb. It was fantastic. Absolute And then, of course, there's a very emotional, beautifully written moment at the end of this. And it was a beautiful goodbye, but more pain because it's home. But I can't wait to read The Golden Fall. Absolutely cannot wait to read The Golden Fall. I'm so excited to pick up the next book in this series. And we're done. There we go. We've talked Hob. We can move on now. I do love Hob. Okay. So, next book. I have been reading Moonlocket series with the wonderful Vadania from Vadania Silver Scribe. We are doing the Cog Along, and this is book 2. So this was the book we were looking at in October. And this was a really good book for this month. This fit perfectly. So the Cogheart series are a children's middle grade series. It's historical. It's set in Victorian London, like it's set in the Victorian England, and it's got sort of like some Penny Dreadful vibes. It's got sort of steampunk vibes. I've said before, it reminds me of kind of the atmosphere. It reminds me slightly of the Joan Aiken kind of Wolves of Willoughby Chase, where you've got slightly, it's mainly like historical, but there's the edge of magical realism in there, and there's some sort of darker characters. There's a lot of adventure. And it's a really fun time. And this one in particular felt very more thrillery. You have an escaped convict at the beginning of this book called Jack Daw. And most characters called Jack, if it's a Victorian book and they're called Jack, you immediately have this kind of connotations of Jack the Ripper, that this is an unsavoury character. In Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard books, you have, was it like the League of Jacks or something like that, where they were all kind of like notorious criminals and murderers. So you kind of still got those vibes from him. You also have a lot of like London sideshow theatres, so your escape artists, your mystics, your mediums, all of those kind of wonderful shows going on. So you've got that atmosphere. So in this book, we get a little bit more about Robert's past. I was slightly dubious about the whole. So in Cogheart, Robert, one of our protagonists, lives with his dad. His mum left them. And I thought that kind of storyline must be so heartwarming and impactful for children where they only do live with one parent for whatever reason. And then, of course, you've got a few hints of, we need to find his mum. Where is his mum? The kind of mystery surrounding his mum. And then I'm like, that's a fun concept. And every child that doesn't have a parent must go through that. There must be something. There must be some mystery surrounding my parents. And one day they'll come back and find me and they're going to be the best parent ever. That kind of fantasy, that kind of dream. And of course, yes, you can go there in storybooks and things, but when you have a reality and that's not your truth, it almost feels sad, like you've pulled out those bits where children could relate to it and children can feel comfort that there's a child like them being fine, living their life and being fine. Whereas when you throw in kind of like a mystic, here's the parent figure back again, you're then like, they're no longer like them and they're no longer fine. So I felt slightly irked by that. But when I was like, okay, fine, we're going on this journey, it'll be lots of fun, it's fine. But I think the way they did it, Robert holds grudges. We found that in the first book. Robert has a lot of emotions. And yes, he's been through a lot and I can understand that. But the bits he's sad about and kind of the way it's done, it wasn't always kind of like the place that I would go to in my brain. But everyone's different and that's fine. But in this case, I quite enjoyed that Robert held grudges. As much as like it comes clear like what his mother's reasons were, and you know, her past and things, and you know, the best of intentions, always like heavily underlined the best of intentions. And I suppose you can still kind of go down that more child-centered, but what about me kind of view. But generally I was like, I can see both sides here. But I enjoyed the way it worked itself out and kind of where we got to at the end. And I thought that was very truthful. Like, you need to, it's not just blood, it is people who are there in your life that are your family. Like, it's not just people that are in your tree and are officially said in a genealogy, this is your family. Your family is the people who want you and who care for you and who you love and trust. And I enjoyed that message from it. So we have, there's a fun mystery to solve, there's riddles to solve. I really enjoyed that. There's moments where there's like a secret code. I'm going to see if I can find a picture of it. And it's like written down, here we go. And it's written down in a triangle. Just click, there we go. So we have this like secret code thing here. And I was like, no, I don't want to read it. I want to work it out. So I got my pen and I got my pencil and I worked out this code. And I want to share that with my Mad March Hare, actually, because I think he'll really enjoy that. So we can write messages to each other in that secret code. That'll be fun. So that was lots of fun. We get to go to London this time. Like last time it was kind of more, there was, we kind of in the forest and the sky. Whereas this time we do go into London, we go into the alleyways, we go into the underground, and we meet some more really fun characters in here. There is definitely the threat of danger. And it's a really fun ride. I enjoyed Lily in here. I enjoyed Malkin. I'm now kind of, Malkin's character is to be this kind of grumpy fox. And I now kind of know his vibe. Whereas it took me a while in Cogheart to kind of work out where he kind of landed. But I now know Malkin and I enjoy Malkin. We got the mechanicals in here again. The lovely Mrs. Rust will always be my favourite. Didn't get enough Anna Quinn as I was hoping for. I do enjoy Anna Quinn and her airship, but she featured a little bit. And yeah, it was a really fun adventure. And I did have a great time reading this one. And I enjoyed chatting as well in our chat. It was good fun. Where did we go next? Ah, yes. So these are the books I hadn't even spoken about last time. So again, I'm someone that reads like several books on the go, depending on my mood and kind of what I can pick up and put down at that moment. So for the rest of the month, I was reading these ones. And I had a great reading month. I really enjoyed my reading month. So I have another book that I really enjoyed that's completely new to me. This I got out the library. So this was not officially a book I was planning to read this month. But I was kind of feeling, doing Blackoweenathon, I was like, I've got a thriller. I think there's an air of mystery in this fantasy and like air aspects of horror, but I really want like a full-on mystery. I haven't had a full-on mystery for a while. I want to read that. And there was a contemporary mystery. I think it was like I can't remember the name for it. It's like something like Story Block. No, not Story Block. The High-Rise Mysteries. The High-Rise Mysteries. I was looking for the High-Rise Mysteries. So I went to the library to kind of look for that. So yeah, I really want like a middle grade mystery. That'd be really good. Couldn't find High-Rise Mysteries, but came across this. Now, this book I had seen in bookshops and I was quite intrigued and interested. So when I saw it in the library, I had to pick it up. So this is the Lizzie and Belle Mysteries. It's the first book in a series called Drama and Danger by J.T. Williams. And what I love about this is, so it's historical. We are in Georgian London in the theatre land. And I love that it has got historical black characters from that time period in it. So there's a wonderful bit at the back of the book all about, so when you have the author acknowledgements, they call it the staged or interview, because you've got the theatre kind of theme throughout this book with J.T. Williams. And she talks about how she came across these different characters in history. I think it was, she was going around Somerset House and she saw this portrait of Dido Belle. And she was just captured by this portrait of this girl in the aristocratic family who looked like her. Like, she had black skin, she had black hair, she was black. And she's like, who is this and where did she come from? So that was part of an inspiration for this. And also Ignatius Sancho, who sounds like such a phenomenal character. There's his portrait as well, and there's lots of different things that he did in his life. So she reimagined them both being in this time period and this kind of scene in here. So there is no historical evidence that Ignatius Sancho played Othello on the stage, but he could have done. And so this was a wonderful kind of opening. So here we have Dido Belle and we have Lizzie Sancho. the daughter of Ignatius Sancho. And so they've got very different lives, and the friendship that they have together and the bond that brings them together and their enjoyment of solving mysteries and the different way they go about it was just so captivating. I love the historical details in this. I love the friendship between these two girls, and I love how they have different ways of doing things and how they are slightly envious of each other's lives but also appreciate parts of their own. So it deals with a lot of kind of like feelings of family and sometimes being slightly jealous of your friend and then feeling guilty for those feelings. So it explores a lot of that. You've got some fantastic parenting in here, wonderful parent rep as always. And it was just such a delight to read. Lizzie Sancho's family is fantastic. It's just such a wonderful, warm, embracing family with parents wanting you to be the best that you can, giving you a bit of leeway, but also putting boundaries on you as well because they're loving parents. So it was interesting to see like Lizzie negotiate around those and still manage to have a wonderful adventure. So it all felt kind of believable from those aspects as well. I always bear in mind that I am an adult reading a middle grade book. So there were moments when it felt slightly clunk to me, but was perfect for the audience it was aimed at. So there was a moment where like it was a little bit nudge, nudge, wink, wink, wink that kind of slightly jolted me out of the story. But I can very much see children really appreciating, like Lizzie starts to explain how you write in ink in this time period, which is fabulous. Like it was a really fun kind of thing to do. But she opens that with, maybe one day you'll be able to pass messages instantaneously, but if you wanted to write in the 1700s, this is what you did. And I'm like, okay, allusion to text messaging there feels a bit weird, but I appreciate what she's trying to do. And I can imagine reading this with my Mad March hair and him going, we can do that now, and just appreciating that. So there's moments where I think it will definitely work for children, but it slightly jarred me, but that's an absolute minor detail. I had a wonderful time with this book. I loved how in the mystery books they kind of kept breaking it down. So you have like their case notes and they go through them and they keep changing them. So that was really wonderful of like putting the mystery in the front part and kind of work with them doing all of their working out. There's a lot of adventure in here. They kept you guessing. Did I? No, I don't think I didn't work it out either. So that's always fun. I wasn't really sure what was going on. There was one moment I was like, I don't trust you, but hadn't completely added all the pieces together. So yeah. If you're a big mystery reader, you'll probably work it out. But the ride was wonderful. The historicalness was wonderful. The positive Black representation was wonderful. The characters were so joyful. The writing was really engaging. I had a great time with this book. This was a really, really good read, and I highly recommend. Brings me on to Bands of Mourning. I read some of and I enjoy. It's a reread and it was just so much fun to get back into this. This was my favourite so far of the Era 2 books, so it was really great getting back into all those characters and things with that one. And I finally read The Library of the Dead, which has been on my shelves for over a year. It was a birthday present to myself because I was so excited about it. And I had a really good time with this book. Now, this book is one that is not going to appeal to everyone because I think it very much depends on what your expectations are when you're going into this. This is a YA fantasy with, I'd say it's a YA paranormal fantasy. And there's like, what's the word I'm looking for? There's like horror aspects in here, and I'm not a horror reader, but it just verged on the edge of acceptable imbalance of the fantasy. So like if it had gone any further, I would have struggled, but it was just kind of the right amount, and I enjoyed what I read of this. I had heard prior to picking this up that not everyone, I hadn't heard people raving about this. I haven't heard people going on about how amazing it is. I had heard that people had read it and enjoyed it, and I had heard that people had struggled with it. And I think one of the reasons people struggle with it is because there was a lot of colloquialism within this book. So there's a lot of slang, which I think people, especially if you are not familiar with the language and the slang that is common in Britain, you may struggle with. And if you are someone that reads in English and English is not your first language, I mean, hats off to you, that's going to be tricky. So I can understand why some people might have found this difficult. You also have the main character, I think she's about 14 years old, and I really like her. But I know this kind of character type is one that not everyone gets on with. And this is what she's kind of the gritty street urchin survivor style, like on the lines of like Lift from Stormlight Archive. And I know people are very mixed on Lift, and I am a Lift fan. I love Lift, so I enjoy those types of characters. She's very different to Lift, but it's that kind of, you know, thinking on your own feet, not caring for the establishment. Those sorts of characters, like very having basically lived in poverty most of your life. It's those sorts of characters. And so Roper, she is a survivor. She is, we kind of meet her and we start to learn how much she is like very much living in poverty, basically. And I think this book is just such a wonderful book for anyone that is a child carer. And I just really appreciated that aspect of this. I think there are so many young people and children that are, for whatever reason, whether it's because their parents have got very serious illnesses, or whether that's physical or mental health, or, you know, there is a lot of grief going on in the family, or really like troubling times and like high parent stress levels, or parents that don't necessarily have the natural instinct to engage with children, or parents that just don't want to. Whatever reason, there are children that basically act like the grown-ups in their families for different reasons, and some will have more than others because varies of different circumstances. Some absolutely can't be helped. And you know, and in this one, you know, she comes from a really warm and loving family, but she lives with her gran, who is old and ill, basically. You know, she's still got her faculties, she's still very much mentally present. But Rope has very much taken on like the family caregiver and breadwinner. You know, she's doing all the manual tasks that is needed. They live in a caravan, so they pay rent to the farmer to be in his field, and so they're in like this commune of caravans. So, you know, it's cold. They have to like fetch their own water to get the water. They have to, you know, she has to empty her own toilet. As someone who went on holidays as a child in a caravan, like every year we would go to a campsite and be in the caravan. I did not take on those tasks, but I am very aware of what those tasks involve. So for her to be doing, you know, this was fun in the summer as a fun adventure, but for you to be living this as your life in Scotland in the winter, that's one, harsh conditions as it is. And for her to be taking on all that physical labor, and then she's got this mental load of trying to earn money to pay the rent, and, you know, really wanting her sister to be able to keep her childhood and not have to take that responsibility that she's had to do. She wants her sister to get an education. She wants her sister to be able to be the best she can be without struggling through the poverty that she is. And she also doesn't want her gran to feel guilty any more than what she already does. So there's so much weight on her shoulders that I just think she's phenomenal. So obviously she is gonna have a massive chip on her shoulder towards society. You know, you just will. It's like society doesn't care about you. Like, and so if society doesn't care about you, why would you care about them? So her character feels so truthful, and I have a lot of empathy for her and time for her. And the more you read the book, the more you kind of like see that underneath those little chips there's a deep crack, and when you filter through that crack, you find like the warmth and the love and the loyalty and everything in there. So I very much enjoyed her character. You have the hard exterior, and then you also have like other parts underneath, but you understand why the hard exterior needs to be there, because I think in those situations it's very much either you survive and get hardened, or you don't survive. And it's really hard. And she's a survivor. She's doing whatever she can, not only for herself, but also her family. And I just have a lot of admiration for her and everything that she goes through. There are, and she, you know, she's still enjoying herself. There's a lot of things in here. And I think, so I flicked through and had a look at some of the reviews, because I was looking at how many ratings this had, which I'll come on to in a moment. And this doesn't get a lot of love, which is very sad. And I think it's a mixture of the writing and people also not connecting to Roper and people having different expectations of the story. I don't know what everyone's perception was going into here. I was very much interested in the ghost whispering. I was interested in the library. But as you're kind of reading it, you feel like, well, the plot is very clearly not going to enable us to spend a huge amount of time at the library. And you didn't. There was a small part. There was enough of the library that I loved the library. The library was so well done. It's so intriguing. It's so fascinating. And I feel it's going to show up in other books. But you couldn't really call this, you know, the mystery of the missing children. It's not got the same ring to it or feel to it. And there is a lot of death and dead and kind of like occult stuff in here that she's dealing with. So it works for me. But if you are here wanting the library to be a huge aspect of it, you know, like the Starless Sea, it's not that. It's a small part of it. But, you know, there is a mystery that's being solved in here. There is Roper also managing her day-to-day life in here. And I enjoyed that day-to-day life aspect because it gave the character layers and it helped us understand what she was dealing with and why her survival was so important. Like, she's not just surviving for her, she's surviving for her family. And if she doesn't get back to them, they're going to really struggle without her. And that's like a massive motivation, even more for her to try and get out of stuff. More than kind of self-preservation. You get to kind of explore the world. So there's a lot of ghosts present in here and people are quite accepting of the supernatural. Like, it's not like, oh, no one's going to believe that. It's like there's people that don't want to believe certain aspects. So I think within all fantasy books, you've got like legends and then legends which are real kind of thing going on. But people kind of accept that ghosts pass messages on and like that is her genuine job. And that's really fun kind of seeing her with those. It was really interesting to see like how she communicated with ghosts, and there's a certain amount that is kind of like she's learnt, she's naturally gifted with, that her grandma's kind of passing down. There's different levels. She's supposed to just pass messages, but there's kind of like sometimes there is helping souls move on / exorcism, so she's got sort of like a power and a status herself. And I just enjoyed all of that. I enjoyed all the world. I enjoyed all of the background. There were lots of kind of tense scenes in here. There were lots of stuff that freaked me out in here. And like I said, it was just on the okay side, just about. But there's some wonderful kind of imagery in here. There is very much like a house with like a big horror vibe. I did guess where all of this was going because I think there was one small thing that was mentioned and it's very much like, and then I'm just going to put this red envelope on the mantelpiece here. And then by the end of the book, it's like, now we're going to open the red envelope on the mantelpiece that I told you I was putting here. It's one of those things. Like stage direction. If there's a gun on the stage, it's going to be shot at some point. So like, because of that kind of philosophy of me knowing how stories worked, I was looking for it. And I think people who are, you know, very big readers, particularly in kind of mystery or in like horror books, then there might not have been stuff in here that wasn't surprising to you. But I think if you're someone that reads, you know, like 1 or 2 books a month or like occasionally picks this up and they pick this up, I think they'll probably enjoy it kind of much more from, they will get the kind of surprise factor a bit more from it. For me, I thought the horror aspects were really well done. I was really freaked out by them. And I, surprisingly, because of the edge it stayed on, enjoyed it as the non-horror reader here. It was so freaky. There were certain images in here that were very freaky and will kind of like, will stay with me. And I'm so pleased this is not a graphic novel because in my head, I know my level and it can stay there. So it didn't need to go so graphic. I think there's possibly like fuzzy shadow edges in here where things stayed in the shadows and didn't come out into the light. But if in a graphic book, I think I'd be moments for me. But I really enjoyed this so much. I enjoyed the world that's explored in here. Like I said, I loved Roper. There's some great friendship in here. There is one character that has a disability. She was phenomenal, and I really liked that the disability, like, it wasn't like what defined her. It was just like an added layer of her character. So I thought that was really good. I know it's not own voices. So if anyone who has read this that could shine any own voices light on it as to how that representation was, that would be really cool to see. But from my small life experience, it seemed like it was very good representation. I enjoyed her family. I enjoyed her grandma. There's definitely a lot more to unpick around the magic around the world. This is also a dystopia. So there's a lot of reference to, you greet people and say, God save the king. There's been a war. There's been rebels. We don't know anything more about that. So I don't know if the next book's going to have a little bit more of that politicking that we will see. I'm really excited to read the next book. I'm definitely going to be getting the next book. This is in Waterstones in hardback, and I hope it stays there by the time I'm off my book buying ban, because I really want it. If not, I'm going to have to track it down on World of Books, because, you know, I need it. So this is great. I really enjoyed this. And I really hope it gets more love, because I hope that people go into this knowing more about what it's going to be. And I hope people can appreciate Roper and the language. That's it. I want to go through the language before I put the book away. So just very early on into the chapter, let me try and find it. Okay, so there's a couple of sentences that I'll read here. It's crazy dark because the street lights are kaput, but folks out here can afford a bit of solar power. So kaput, I think, you know, German word for broken, but we use it in, I don't know how common that word is, but that is a commonly used word in Britain for something being broken. I take out my phone, punch in the pod app, and resume listening to my book. Only sticking one earphone in my left ear. You don't want to be so immersed you forget what's around you. That's why I don't do headphones. Sure way to get jacked like a sap. Get jacked like a sap. Don't know how international that phrase is, but like mugged like a fool is that. So it's full of those kind of slang words and that colloquialism. So I don't know how easy it is to read, but I say, like, if you see it in your library, you know, give the first chapters a read and see how the narrative voice works for you. But I really enjoyed it, and I really hope it gets more love. And there was one area when it kind of explores the magic a little bit more that could verge. I don't mind info dumps. You could think it verges on info dump, but it felt very natural because it was Roper learning stuff. And we have, like, from the beginning, she listens to like factual books on her as she's walking around doing her job. So she's trying to continue with her education. She's trying to keep educating herself, which I think is so wonderful. And I just really loved that. So, and because you know that in her character, when she gets to kind of like then be reading these magical textbooks and like trying to learn stuff, it makes sense for her character. And yeah, it all worked for me. But there we go. So yes, really enjoyed The Library of the Dead. Okay, so here is my full range of books for October. So I'm now going to go through my Gothtober and Blackoweenathon. So if you are not sure what Blackoweenathon was, I will link the description, the announcement video from Locktobooktician into the description box. So it's a readathon created by Locktobooktician. I think it's the 4th year of it, where she is encouraging everyone to read books by Black authors, but specifically in the kind of like crime fiction, thriller, horror genres, and just like celebrating Black authors throughout all of that. So the books that I had for this one are these 3. So that's good. I wanted to have a certain amount of, I knew I was not going to be able to hit every prompt because of all my buddy reads that I had in here, but I wanted to like have enough to kind of be able to be involved in the readathons and sprints. Didn't manage to join in as many sprints as I was hoping, but that's because of the way the world works at the moment in terms of I've got young children, I work part-time, there's stuff going on basically, so I wasn't always able to. And so I think there was one where I joined a sprint and then realized half an hour in I'd just like fallen asleep. So things happen. So for this one I have a thriller, a mystery, and a paranormal fantasy. So I think that was a really nice range of books to get in here. So one of the prompts was to read a book that was a backlist from 10 years ago and published in the 20th century. And the second prompt was a book that was published in the 20th century. So for that, I read Mike Phillips' The Dancing Face, and it definitely hit those prompts. It was really interesting to read this thriller. It had a lot of kind of themes around African art and identity, and I definitely did it definitely kind of like took me in different ways I wasn't expecting in this. Didn't kind of connect with the characters so much, but I did enjoy the story and wasn't sure which way it was going to go in. Yeah, I'm glad I read this one. I'm really glad that I read this one for Blackoweenathon. And this particular book was from the Shelterbox book club, and this one was, so it was really nice to be like celebrating Mike Phillips. And this is this particular copy is Black Britain, is a Black Britain series from Penguin's Writing Back. So it's got a wonderful introduction by Bernardino Evaristo, who is an author that I really love. So it was really interesting to kind of hear like how much his work was appreciated by those in the Black community, but how it's such a shame that he wasn't like celebrated more and his work wasn't kind of pulled more into the forefront. So I thought that was really interesting. So the second prompt was a recently published book. I think originally I had Blood Saigon on my list, but I really wanted to read a cozy mystery, and Blood Saigon is fantasy with kind of war themes. So this felt a lot more fitting, even though it was kind of, I loved how it was just like a random chance one, and I had such a fantastic time with this. So this was published this year. The second book, Portraits and Poison, I'm eagerly awaiting, is coming out in February, and I can't wait. And I will be, that's what I need to do my 100 books challenge thing. Everything needs to be read so I can buy it. Basically, I want to buy it. So this is from the library, but I want to own the second one. So that worked really well for that. And the final prompt that I managed to achieve was an underrated author. And this is T.L. Huchu. And I think it definitely fits that. I feel he's very underrated, not only in that because of the Goodreads, but also like reading the reviews. I don't think people appreciated what he was trying to do with this book. Some of them did. Like there were a lot more. So on Storygraph, there were not many positive reviews on there at all. Like it was quite low down. But again, I think that was due to people's expectations, the language, and people not necessarily connecting with Roper. On Goodreads, there was more of a mixture, which was really nice to see. And I have stats. So this is how much of an underrated author he is. So this particular book, I'm going to put it in some context for you. So I chose 4 books to kind of look at. So this is, so on Storygraph, Robin Hobb's Assassin's Apprentice, a well-known fantasy book, had 14,940 people reviewing that book. Gideon the Ninth, a kind of a popular book for this time of year, but more recently published, had 17,459 people reading. Rage of Dragons, a recent fantasy but slightly more popular, written by a Black author, 2,969 reviews. Library of the Dead, 1,566. So underrated. That's on Storygraph. On Goodreads, which is a much more kind of established book reviewing, library tracking platform. What are those things called? I don't know. Anyway, Goodreads, the more established, well-known one. Hobb, Assassin's Apprentice, 283,925. Gideon the Ninth, 85,230. Rage of Dragons, 25,621. Library of the Dead, 10,500. So it's underrated and it needs more love. We need more love for Roper. I'm really excited to read the next one. So yes, so there we go. I hit 4. The 2 main prompts that I didn't hit in Blackoweenathon was a book set in the South. I never got around to reading The Conductors, or what was the other one I was going to read? Conjure Women. Never got around to reading those, but I am looking forward to reading them at some point later in the year. And also a book with queer representation as well. I didn't manage to read one of those. I was going to read The Prey of Gods. That's still unread on my shelf, and I'm really excited for it and want to read it. But hey, I feel impressed I managed to get 3 done. So that was really good. I had a really good time. I loved looking at everyone's videos. I loved the bits of the sprints I caught, and I loved all the vlogs and things. I watched a lot of Courtney's vlogs from Tangible Reads. They were really good fun. And I did manage to join in some of her sprints as well, which was really cool. So thanks very much, Bree. This was such a great readathon, and I can't wait to join in next year. Actually, I'm going to keep these out because I think these hit a lot of the Gothtober ones as well. Okay. So the other readathon that I wanted to take part in was Gothtober, which is a readathon created by Hannah from @LadetM, and also supported by the co-hosts Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe and Tish from Little Wolf. And again, I'll put all of their channels and the announcement video in the description so you can see what it was all about. I had a great time with this readathon too. They had a theme of like Final Girls, and I really loved doing the game to get your prompts. It was so much fun. So I did not think that I had got as many as I ended up getting. So I'm going to go through them now. So everyone, regardless of what you choose, needs to read a book that has like a gothic mood. You know, it's Gothtober, you need a gothic book. And Belladonna fit that perfectly. We have the haunted house, we have death as a character. It was all of those creepy vibes, and it was so much fun. So tick. We then had I then chose to wear, I went for the kind of the camp one. I went down the kind of the summer camp, spooky summer camp road, and I chose to wear a raincoat and flip-flops. And so for that I got the prompt of short book, and I have Oxygen Masks, which is a graphic novel by Jason Reynolds, and the art is by Jason Griffin, and they collaborated on this project together. And although it looks very thick from here, it's very deceptive because this is a graphic novel and full of art, and this is the amount of text you get on the page. So it's very short in terms of the word count. So that fits really, really well. Also love this, really impactful. And then a book with some blue on the cover because I chose to go to the spooky boathouse. And for that, as we can see, the background around Fool's Errand, we have blue, and we have blue in the beautifully decorated F. So I say that is the main colour of this book. As we know, I love Fool's Errand. I then chose a bow and arrow as one of my skill sets, which gave me the prompt of multiple death and mass casualties. There is multiple death in the Library of the Dead, whether that's from natural causes or any causes, lots of ghosts, but there was also a lot of casualties from certain things in here as well. So that fitted that perfectly. A book by a BIPOC author, that could work for anything. So BIPOC is Black, Indigenous, or person of colour. I've got a lot of these, but again, this works perfectly for T.L. Huchu. The main character is it Scottish Zimbabwe? I think that's what it said. Yeah, Scottish Zimbabwe, and T.L. Huchu is a Black author. No LGBT in any of the books that I read this month, so that one I can't meet, unfortunately. But there was some disability representation in here by a fantastic character whose name I've totally forgotten. I've literally just read this. Hold on. Thought it began with P. Character called Priya, who is fabulous, and she is in a wheelchair, and something that happened to her spine, so she is immobile from the bottom half. But that is not, like, that's not what defines her character. She is so much fun. She's got a lot going on for her. She's a healer. That's just an aspect of her. She just happens to have a disability, which is what I think is really positive disability rep. But again, I'm looking at this as an able-bodied person, so if other people have different opinions, I would love to hear them. Or the same opinion. Anyone who has more of an authority on this opinion, I would say. If that makes any sense. Anyway, moving along. So this one hit quite a few of the prompts. Blood on the cover, because I chose to go and get some first aid, or I had training in first aid. And I was going to try and read Blood Scion, but there wasn't enough hours in the day or days in the month, so didn't get that one. And then I chose to find a point of authority, which meant I needed to read a book where you can't trust anyone. And in The Dancing Face, I feel you can't trust anyone. There is you don't know which direction the story is going. There are lots of different characters that you don't know whether or not to trust. So that fits that one beautifully. Would also have worked for Blue Cover as well, but I'm trying to get as many books in the prompts as possible. And then the final thing, I decided I would get a team together, which meant I needed to read a book that has multiple survivors. And for this one, I went for the Lizzie and Belle Mysteries drama